Hello, History 111 class. My name is Tony Melendez, along with Robert Kane and Amanda Serville, and our topic is medieval warfare. What was medieval warfare, one may ask? Technological, cultural, and social developments had forced a dramatic transformation in the character of warfare and changed military tactics and the role of cavalry and artillery. I will focus on the battles that occurred during the Middle Ages. For those who don't know, Middle Ages refers to the period between the fall of Rome until the Renaissance in the 14th century. The battle that I will talk about all occurred during the 100-Year War that involved England versus France. The main goal was England was trying to expand their land. The Battle of Agincourt happened on 25th October 1415. The English army landed in France and besieged the port town of Harfleur with 11,000 men. The siege took its toll. Many in the army died of disease like the Black Plague. Henry lost half his men to disease and battle casualties. At the Battle of Agincourt, Henry's army was probably around 5,000 knights, men at arms, and archers. Estimates of the size of the French army vary widely from 30,000 to as high as 100,000. He decided to march his army northeast to Calais. At Agincourt, however, a vast French army of 20,000 men stood in his path, greatly outnumbering the exhausted English archers, knights, and men at arms. The English stood their ground as French knights, weighed down by their heavy armor, began to slow advance across a muddy battlefield. The French were met by a furious bombardment of artillery from the English archers, who wielded initiative longbows with a range of 250 yards. French cavalrymen tried and failed to overwhelm the English positions, but the archers were protected by a line of pointed stakes. As more and more French knights made their way onto the crowded battlefield, their mobility decreased further, and some lacked even the room to raise their arms and strike a blow. At this point, Henry ordered his lightly equipped archers to rush forward with swords and axes, and the encumbered Englishmen massacred the French. Almost 6,000 Frenchmen lost their lives during the Battle of Agincourt, while English deaths amounted to just over 400. With odds greater than 3-1, Henry had won one of the greatest victories of military history. After further conquests in France, Henry V was recognized in 1420 as heir to the French throne and the regent of France.
Medieval castles were located all throughout Europe and Asia. However, in this presentation, I'm only going to be talking about European castles. These castles were used to house the royal family as well as the royal court. However, peasants often took refuge within their walls. Attackers used siege warfare to try and bring down the castle. This involved cutting off the food and water supplies of the castle. This is why many castles had a well and farms inside their walls. To help keep attackers out, most castles had a thick wall around the whole complex called a curtain wall. This wall was short, however it could be up to 20 feet thick. The closer you got to the middle of the castle, the taller the walls got, so they could see any enemies in any direction. There are walkways atop most walls, so archers could walk on them and shoot enemies, as well as drop deadly items on the enemies. Another form of defense that they used was digging large ditches around the castle and filling them with water. These were called moats. The largest moat was 30 feet deep. Most of the castle's waste ran directly into the moat, making the stagnant water a nasty cesspool. However, this did not deter attackers from swimming or wading across the moat. The moat did, however, prevent attackers from using battering rams and siege towers, and prevented them from digging under the castle walls. Digging under the castle walls was actually very deadly, as it could cause a whole corner of the castle to crumble. This is why they eventually started building round castles. During times of peace, peasants and citizens needed a way to enter the castle without having to swim across the moat. This is why they invented the drawbridge, a bridge that could be raised up and down whenever they want. The entrance to the castle was the castle's most vulnerable point. This is why they built an extremely fortified guardhouse around the entrance. The guardhouse had a heavy metal door that could be raised or lowered called a portcullis. Also, in the guardhouse ceilings, there was holes called murder holes where the defenders would dump boiling water and hot oil on the enemies below. There were also slits in the walls for archers to shoot out of. As well as having built-in defenses, castles were often built atop hills or mountains to make them easier to defend and harder to attack. As you can see in this drawing of a castle, here's the moat, here's the guardhouse, here's the drawbridge. Inside of the castle you can see a farm and a well, and you can also see the walkways for the archers to walk on. And this wall right here is called the curtain wall. This castle here is my favorite castle called the Warwick Castle. It was built in 1068 AD in Warwick, British Isles. It boasts many features that I just listed, including the curtain wall and a moat right there.
The baton. The medieval batons were used by foot soldiers in the Middle Ages. It also was known as the cudgel, baton, truncheons, nightsticks, or bludgeon. It is among the simplest of all melee weapons. It was usually a short stick made of whalebone or wood and had been used several since prehistoric times. The baton was quickly substituted by blade weapons, but some still used it as a throwing weapon. The crossbow. The crossbow consisted of a tiller made of wood and often decorated with horn, ivory, or bone, to one end of which was attached a short bow. The strings to launch the bolt were made from hemp, strong and resilient fibers. The flail. The medieval flail had an iron head attached to a steel chain for extra length. While fully stretched, the flail could reach 30 inches and could penetrate even the best armor. The spear. The spear, as a medieval weapon, mostly used in warfare, was a pole weapon with a pointed blade at one end. Spears were used as both melee weapons and projectiles. The usual length of the staff was 8 to 9 feet. The caltrop. The caltrop were composed of 4 spikes or points arranged so that however thrown on the ground, one spike always would stick up. They were mainly used for slowing down the advance of horses, war elephants, and armies. The warhammer. The warhammer was a very deadly weapon. When mounted on a pole, it could damage without penetration the armor. Even the thickest helmet could not be used as defense against the powerful blow of the warhammer. The spike end could be used for grappling the enemy's armor, reins, or shield, or it could be turned in the direction of the blow to penetrate even the heaviest armor. It often was used to target the legs of horses, toppling the armored opponent to the ground where they could be more easily mauled. Scimitar. The scimitar originated in the Middle East and has a distinctive curved blade designed for slicing enemies from horseback. The blades ranged from 30 to 36 inches in length. The dagger, commonly known as a dagger, is considered to be history's most famous weapon. The dagger was used as a close quarters fighting weapon with a sharp point, used as a stabbing or thrusting weapon. During the early Middle Ages, the term dagger disappeared and was replaced by the hewing knife and seax. It wasn't until the late Middle Ages that the weapon reappeared as the knightly dagger. The great sword and the long sword were commonly used swords by knights during the Middle Ages.